Hello, and welcome back for another Firebird Nation Sports Update. I'm Patricia Thomas. On this edition, I'll bring you my exclusive interview with legendary Georgetown University men's basketball head coach emeritus, John Thompson, Jr. The connection between Georgetown University and John Thompson is well known. But what is not as well known is the connection between John Thompson and the University of the District of Columbia. But first, my co-host, Eric Zedalis, will bring you updates on the most recent Firebird action.
UDC is in full swing with men's and women's basketball about to enter East Coast Conference play, and the women's indoor track and field team just beginning. We'll begin with women's indoor track, which opened its season at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore Lid Lifter Invitational. Head coach Alton McKenzie said of the opening meet, "I was very pleased with the competitiveness in every event and this team's effort to compete aggressively. That competitiveness helped us measure where our fall training has us as we prepare for a long indoor season." Highlights of the meet for the Firebirds included sophomore Stacey Ann Rowe making her debut for UDC, competing in 2 sprint events. She was a runner-up in the 60-meter hurdles with a time of 9.58 seconds and 4th in the 60-meter dash with a time of 8.1 seconds. Meanwhile, freshman Saida Burnsmore was a winner in her debut as a Firebird in the high jump. Her 1.6-meter clearance places her 30th in the country in Division II and is just shy of the NCAA provisional mark of 1.65 meters. She was named East Coast Conference Women's Field Athlete of the Week for her efforts. Finally, senior Simone Grant opened her indoor campaign with a strong showing in the long jump. She was a runner-up and the top Division II athlete at the meet with a mark of 5.37 meters. Her jump, too, was not far off the NCAA provisional mark of 5.57 meters. We turn now from the track to the hardwood. Mike Riley's men's basketball squad is off to a 2-6 start, which includes 4 losses by less than 10 points and 2 that were in overtime. UDC won its last outing in a thriller, 110-106 over The Apprentice School, led by star juniors transfer guard Kasim Chandler's school record-setting 39-point scoring performance. Chandler, who leads the East Coast Conference with 20.9 points and 2.9 steals per game, was recently named East Coast Conference Player of the Week. Fellow team newcomer Joseph Nickerson is not far off as he ranks 3rd in the league in steals with 2.4 per game, and he also ranks 6th in assists with 26, 7th in blocks with 11, 7th in rebounds with 52, and 14th in scoring with 14 points per game. Nickerson has scored in double figures in all but 1 game and has one double-figure rebounding game versus Bowie State. UDC as a team is 13th in Division II with 5.1 block shots per game, 17th with 10 steals per game, and 24th with 145 free throws made this season. The next challenge is the East Coast Conference. The women's basketball team is off to a 4-3 start under first-year head coach Dwayne Burrows. The Firebirds, with senior Chantrell Oliver injured indefinitely, have been missing a point guard all season long, but veteran guard Tajruba Baldwin-Kalor has stepped up big time in her absence. Recently, Baldwin-Kalor steered the Firebirds to a 68-61 victory over Lincoln with a career-high 30-point scoring performance and earned East Coast Conference Player of the Week honors. She currently ranks 5th in the league in scoring with 16.9 points per game, 2nd in free throw percentage at 93%, 5th in steals with 15, and 9th in assists with 18. Senior forward Iman Scott has also been a big presence for UDC as she averages 13.3 points and 4.9 rebounds per contest. And senior forward Tatiana Calhoun continues to be the team's heart and soul with her hustle style of play, as she leads the team with 9.3 rebounds per game while also pitching in 8.1 points. The Firebirds women's basketball team are expected to do well in the East Coast Conference schedule.
The connection between Georgetown University and John Thompson Jr. is well known. But what is not as well known is the connection between John Thompson and the University of the District of Columbia. For more than 30 years, I worked in the Georgetown University Department of Athletics. And over those years, I had the opportunity to work with Coach Thompson and so many others who helped build the Georgetown University athletic brand that you know today. When I returned to Georgetown to do this interview with Coach Thompson, I was again reminded of his grace, insight, humor, wisdom, and candor. Just a few of the reasons why he is not only one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time, but also one of the best human beings I have ever had the privilege to know. Coach, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today. Back in the day, UDC was a big deal, and from the federal city and even from the predecessor institutions. And I understand that you got your master's degree there, that you studied at the university.
Well, I did. I worked there, and I also got my master's degree in counseling and guidance from the University of the District of Columbia under Dr. Anita Hughes, who I thought, Pat, was an extremely special person in my life. In fact, I still have her in my life. Under my name in the Hall of Fame is her name, as people who had influence on my life.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so tell me about your work there. What were you?
Well, I was involved in 4-H and youth. They were trying to put a urban spin on 4-H, because most of the time when people think about 4-H, they think about 4-H as it relates to rural areas and farming, and they were trying to use the same concept within the city, and Federal City being a cooperative extension university, that aspect of it was what I was involved with, and I enjoyed it. You projects with kids throughout the district area, and you had various little projects, and you went to the convention in Chicago, the 4-H convention.
So that was part of the university's land grant mission.
That's exactly right. Okay. That was exactly what it was, and you know, it was fun. It was really fun because Kingman Boys Club, you know, that's in Northwest Washington, was heavily involved in it. We had bicycle projects, we had sewing projects, you know, we had projects where kids would get involved in doing things in their yards. And the whole concept of 4-H is to teach the kids so the parent will watch the kid, and then it carries over to the parent. It's the backwards education where we think of the parent teaching the kid. But 4-H's whole concept is that you show the kid how to do something, the parent will say, oh my God, how do those flowers get to be that pretty, and the flower do it. So it was fun.
That's great.
Most people don't think of me in 4-H.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So and then obviously you had a great time while you were at the university.
Well, I had a tremendous time. You know, I tell people that I went to college to get a degree. I went to Federal City College, which was the name at the time, which is presently UDC. I went to UDC to get an education under Dr. Hughes, because I tell people that Anita Hughes had more impact on my thinking about a lot of things, almost any person in my life. And as you know, I'm in the Hall of Fame, and they asked me for people who had a major influence because they wanted to carve it in stone up there. And I said, Dr. Anita Hughes. I still am in touch with her. We talk, you know, and she had an enormous impact in my life.
Just talk to me a little bit about the culture of basketball in Washington, D.C.
Well, you know, basketball had a major influence on leading you to other things, because as you know from growing up in the city, that basketball was one of the things where a kid could get identity or recognition. And I don't know whether we played it because of the fact we loved the game, or we played it because it was an avenue to give us recognition. And a lot of the people followed Elgin Baylor. I tell people, you talk about Dr. Anita Hughes, Elgin Baylor was my Joe Louis in life. You know, my mother and father's Joe Louis, I should say, is that everybody talked about him. He went to Spingarn High School. His street name was Rabbit. You know, wow. and I heard people talk about him. And I used to ask my sisters, I have 3 sisters, I was the only boy in my family, and I used to say, who is this guy, Rabbit? Because people would pass my house talking about Rabbit, and they said, it's a boy that plays basketball in Spingarn. Well, hell, we all started playing basketball. He shot a jump shot, raising one leg. All of us raising one leg, trying to shoot it. But the influence is, to your point, the influence of basketball had me have an opportunity to get an education. I liked baseball at first. The older guys influenced me in telling me that that's how I could get an education, by playing basketball.
Is that right?
So, you know, you play the George Leftwich. I went to John Carroll, you know, and Leftwich is probably the most competitive person that I ever played with in my life.
Is that right?
We won 55 games in a row, and we won 2 city championships, and in one of them I had 17 points at halftime. I just want to note that, you know. But it was a great experience, I think, because the relationships which still exist that you had, and you know, if a black kid did something in science, or if a black kid did something, you know, in any other avenue, it was difficult for him to get recognition, or her to get recognition, you know. So we used sports as an avenue to give us passageway through the American system that we have here. Sports helped to integrate a lot of schools. Ironically, Georgetown was a school where people at the university told me when I left John Carroll that they were not ready for a black person. Yeah, I loved the coach who was at Georgetown at the time. He liked me, but he didn't encourage me to come to Georgetown because Georgetown at that time was not very comfortable in taking blacks. Well, you know, as time went on and we started to play, basketball integrated a lot of schools, not just in Washington, in this country, because people could understand the economic value of winning. Right. You know, see, and as the result of that, a lot of guys came. When I came over, I brought the guys who, and really, if you were able to look at my wall, those are the 5 guys of my first class that I brought here. Right. You know, and those are guys that came from St. Anthony's with me. You know, and the great thing about Georgetown that I liked, Pat, is they never asked me to be anything other than what I was. You know how sometimes white folks come and whisper to you in the night, you know what I mean, be careful, don't say that, don't do that, you know. And I tried to be respectful of them, but they never came to me one time when I took positions on things or I said things that I thought needed to be said. I didn't get that knock on the door in the middle of the night, be careful, don't say that, and I respect the university for that. Right,
right. That's wonderful. Continuing to talk about legends in Washington, D.C., I think about a man who I believe was called a wizard, and I think there was a nickname also for Will Jones, who coached and won the national championship for the Firebirds. Well, what are your thoughts about Will Jones? And let me tell you this, Coach. When I got the job at UDC, he was one of the first people to call me, to welcome me to the institution. And one of the things he said was, you know, why didn't Big John ever play me? And I said, now, Coach, you know, John was very strategic in his scheduling, and he's no fool. But as a matter of fact, Georgetown did play the University of the District of Columbia. I found that out after our conversation, and I found this plaque for the first game. And I actually remember that because I was here on the hilltop when that game was being played.
Well, I certainly remember Will Jones, and he wasn't a fool. The reason he called you, he didn't want you to fire him. Don't feel that it was a call of affection. Willie was special to me. You know, I tell people that Elgin Baylor was the best basketball player to ever come out of Washington, skipped 5 places and didn't name Willie as the second best. I thought he was just good, and as flamboyant as Willie was about things, he was very knowledgeable as a coach, an excellent coach. In fact, the year we won the national championship, they also won the national championship at UDC. But nowhere in the world was I going to play them when he was coaching me.
He got a big kick out of that conversation.
Yeah, no, and he would call me up and call me all kinds of names affectionately, and wanted to know why wasn't I playing.
Right.
I told him, I'm not playing.
Talk to me about Mike Riley as a student athlete and as one of your assistant coaches.
Well, Michael, I cannot say enough about the respect that I have for Michael. We recruited Michael, Pat, one year when we had difficulty in getting a point guard. You know, in my recollection of Michael being at Cardozo, he went to Cardozo High School here in Washington, was who was that little guy that Cardozo had that was a defensive, excellent defensive player? And somebody told me, well, he's in the service. I said, in the service? They said, yeah, he's in the Navy. Well, I sent 2 of my assistant coaches after doing a little research down south, and he happened to be getting out, and the captain of the ship that he was on brought them in and had dinner with him and talked to him. And, you know, it's an interesting story. But anyway, you know, Michael ended up coming. The thing that I respect him is he was a single parent, and he was raising a son, Ricky. Hey, Pat,
yes.
When he came to Georgetown, Michael had his son in the stands when we would practice late sometimes. His son's lying on the bench in the stands asleep. Yeah. And, you know, defensively, I tell people when they ask me who was the best defensive player to ever play at Georgetown, was it Patrick, was it Allen, was it Gene? I said, no. I said, Alexander Mundy, the thief. I said, it was Michael Riley. They said, Alexander Mundy, what do you mean? I said, Michael Riley. Yeah. I said, the students at Georgetown, when I put him in the game, would be almost quiet. When Mike took the ball, the whole stands would say, got it. You know, but he was special, and as a person, as a student, and an older guy coming out of the service, he was great to reinforce. As you know, in being an educator, it's always good to have people who support what you're saying and convey that to those in which you're working with. But I can't say enough about Michael as a person, his responsibility. People think about single parents as being only women.
Right.
You know, they don't have the concept of a man having to do that and to raise his child. And I saw him do that. I saw him do schoolwork. I saw him put up with my foolishness. All 3 of those things he was doing at the same time. So you got a jewel when you got him, because I can't think of enough about and Michael's so sincere.
Yes, he is.
Sometimes he's too serious.
I agree with you. Yes,
he's so sincere about things. But I love him to pieces, and he was special. He was the best defensive player to ever play at Georgetown.
Talk about Mike as a coach, and what was it like working with him?
Well, I thought he was a great coach. In fact, a lot of his responsibilities were the defensive side of the ball, for which we had a reputation nationally for.
Yes.
You know, and not only that, I mean, he could coach. In order to be a good defensive coach, you have to understand offense. You know what I mean? Because that's what you're trying to stop, and that's what you're trying to do. But I just thought that he communicated extremely well with the students. You know, and he was enthusiastic about it. Michael got just as excited about a good play as he got upset with a bad play.
Right.
And I think that, as I always say to coaches, if you're going to be loud with your criticism, then be just as loud with your praise. You know, and I think that that's indicative of what he was, you know what I mean, with it. But I just thought he was a great coach. He was a person who knew what I like to do, having played for me, and he wasn't reluctant to say to me, you need to think about what you said about so-and-so. You know, Coach, what do you think? Can we try this? Because you don't want yes men. You want company men.
Exactly.
You want people who believe in, you know, the whole concept, but you want people who will feed you thoughts and ideas. And he did that, and I enjoyed coaching him, and I enjoyed also his being on my staff.
I think he's going to do some great things at UDC.
Well, I think he'll do great things at UDC if the people at UDC realistically understand what it takes to do those great things.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't say he was Christ. You know, I didn't say that he could perform a miracle, nor did I say that you can perform a miracle.
Right.
But the university, based on what I knew of it, expected things or exceeded what they were willing to make a commitment at. I hope that's not the case now. You know, and you can't be at UDC and think that you can compete on the level that a Georgetown or Big East schools without the funding.
Right.
That's the cold reality of it. Let's not fantasize. This is not about teaching. It's not about mentoring kids only. Those things are extremely important. But what happens in education, I found out, Pat, in my experiences, is that people have visions of sugar plums. Santa Claus ain't the only one. They got visions of sugar plum in their head, that they get to thinking, why aren't we as good as Kansas? Why aren't we as good as Indiana? It's very simple. You don't have the funding, you don't have the facilities, you don't have the supportive services that makes that work. So in order for those, well, you know, you were here and you helped to develop what we have here at Georgetown. But you've got to be realistic, and sometimes universities like UDC, which I love, as I told you, that UDC helped to educate me. Other places where I went helped me get a degree.
Right.
You know, but as you know, sometimes we want to be something that we don't have a realistic view of what it takes to be that.
Correct, correct.
And that's what I'm saying about Michael. Michael is not going to beat us. We'll kill him. And it has nothing to do with his intellectual ability or the kids that you have there. It has more to do with the funding.
Right.
Our funding is totally different. Let's
Right.
not be foolish. UDC is my university too. You know, so I've got an obligation to tell you the truth, but there's no need in us running around here talking about what UDC. Willie did a phenomenal thing.
Yes, he did.
You know, and being able to win with that group of kids that he ran with. But it took a lot of effort and a lot of time to be able to do that. So Michael will be fine. If they give him the support that he needs,
Yes.
and forget support, money. If they give the money into it, he knows how to do it, and you know how to do it. I mean, you've been here. You people were people who contributed to my success. That's why they hired you. So there's no need in them taking you over there and not let you do the things that you know how to do because you have done it. That's the same thing that pertains to Michael. Y'all not experimenting.
That's true.
You know what the hell it takes to get it done.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. And as I had mentioned with our new president, Ron Mason, I believe that he gets it. He understands athletics. He understands what it takes. And he's been very, very supportive in the 4 months that I've had the opportunity to work with him.
Yeah, but if I can interrupt you, it has to extend past you and Michael. That man needs the support of this city. He needs the support of, y'all are still a land-grant institution.
That's right. Yes, we are.
So the government has got to give him the funding that he needs
Yes.
to do it. You know what I mean? Certainly he's got a dream. You have a dream. And that's all I'm saying. Because, Pat, I saw that when I was at UDC. Everybody dreaming about, oh, we ought to do this, we ought to do the other. Well, the man's running the school and he needs the resources, the economic resources.
That's correct.
He don't need prayers. He can go to church on his own. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He needs money. See,
Yes.
and that's the thing that has to happen. I mean, because the poor man is going to be sitting there saying, hey, I can't even use my creativity unless I have money. So it's not just you and Michael. It's the president of the university. I sit on the board of directors at Nike, okay?
Yes.
And I sit on it with Tim Cook, who runs Apple. Nobody's below him. Nobody's above him. Okay, I sit on with Phil Knight, who has one of the best records in terms of economics in sports. Okay, I sit on with pharmaceutical people, the second in command at FedEx. Those people got money.
Yes.
They're smart people, very smart people, but they have money. So don't think the president of your college is going to come here and because he's black and because he's committed to black people and all those swan songs we give people, that he's going to be successful unless they give him the economic support.
Correct.
You know, pray for him after you give him the money, and you'd be surprised how God will help you.
Send some of those folks our way, John, that you just mentioned.
You got to go get them yourself.
That's great. I think that I read that Al McGuire said that you are above the trees, and I know that for a fact that you are. You are a star, Coach Thompson, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
And I appreciate you having me, but I want to reiterate what I said before.
Okay.
Dr. Anita Hughes ran that graduate program at UDC, and she changed my life. I can say that, you know, and not to say that the people at Providence College, the Dominicans didn't educate me, or the Augustinians at Carroll. But Dr. Anita Hughes at Federal City College, which is now University of District of Columbia, had one of the greatest impacts on my life of anybody that I experienced. And for that, I am very grateful to the university. for that, because she is somebody who is a friend of mine, and even today, she's retired and lived in Tennessee, that we still communicate and talk with one another about it, because I just thought that there were so many things at the university that I was exposed to that I had never been exposed to. Even though I lived in Washington, I lived in public housing for 10 years, and the whole black thing, there was swan song that we like to give people. I can give that swan song. But that didn't have a damn thing to do with what that lady at Federal City College, University of District of Columbia, for that I'm very grateful to her. But again, she couldn't have done that without support.
Right.
I mean, let's not get away from, you know, with black people, the only people in the world that people make believe having money is a sin. You know, you need money to do the things that you have to do, and you'd be surprised at how creative we are.
So Pat, most of us know John Thompson Jr., the legend. You got to know John Thompson Jr., the person. After working with him for 33 years, tell us, what was that like?
Eric, it was a learning experience. Working with Coach on a daily basis was actually a seminar in critical thinking. I learned to observe. I learned the importance of communication and when to speak and when not to speak, and the importance of developing relationships, not only with student athletes, but with colleagues, with the media. It was just a vast learning experience on a daily basis.
Well, thanks for joining Pat and me for Firebird Nation Sports Update. If you would like more current information, you can follow UDC Athletics on the web at www.udcfirebirds.com, on Twitter at UDC Athletics, on Facebook at UDC Athletics, and on YouTube at UDC Athletics 1. I'm Eric Zedalis.
I'm Patricia Thomas. See you next time on Firebird Nation Sports Update.